According to a Finder survey, 61% of households with a combined income of between $50,000 and $99,000 admit that they are living paycheck to paycheck with no savings buffer. Welcome to Dollars and Dreams, the podcast designed to empower you to take control of your personal and business finance. You know, the very thought of money and finance can often send chills down your spine and stir up fear of the unknown. But let's change that narrative together. Through this podcast, my goal is to not only to provide you with useful information, but also to inspire and motivate you to take action towards your own financial goals. Let's rewrite your money story together. Welcome to today's episode of Dollars and Dreams. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how you can stop living paycheck to paycheck. And one of the things that we always find whenever anybody is under financial stress, that we forget to look at our budgeting, we forget to put things in place so that we save for expenses that we have coming up. And that means then that quite often we're turning to short-term lending, credit cards, or of course buy now, pay later. Later on in the episode, we're going to have a chat to Mel. Now, Mel works in our office here at 123 Financial Group, and she's pivotal to the production of our podcast here at Dollars and Dreams. She's part of our Got Money Honey team as well. Now, Mel is in her 20s. She is engaged to her wonderful fiance and has a new little puppy that has added to the costs. So we'll chat to Mel about her struggles that she has and her thoughts around money and how she relates to all these cost of living pressures that we're experiencing at the moment. So some of the reasons that we have find that people live paycheck to paycheck, of course, is because there is not enough planning. So breaking out of the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck is one of the things that you need to do if you are going to gain control of your financial situation and start building wealth for the future. Whenever you are just living paycheck to paycheck, you'll find that you're not looking after long-term or short-term savings. Generally, people living paycheck to paycheck will not have an emergency fund in place. And so then when there is an emergency in their life, they will turn to buy now, pay later, credit card debt, or of course, store credit or short-term lending, which of course then exasperates the situation because you're then trying to pay back a loan as well as living paycheck to paycheck. It can be quite difficult in a rising cost of living that we're experiencing at the moment to break that cycle. But everybody that I've ever worked with, and this is the same cycle that I broke for myself when my children were young teenagers, is that you just have to stop and look at where you spend your money. And of course, knowledge is power. So knowing where you spend money allows you to make changes. And it's through that change that you can break the cycle of surviving from one day to the next. And it is important that you look at where you're spending, put changes in place, and look to reduce your outlay. That can sometimes mean that there is some short-term pain. You might need to stop buying your lunches every day of the week. You might need to buy cheaper cuts of meat. You might need to walk to work instead of catching the Uber. There's lots of ways, and it will be always different for everyone. But without investigating where you spend your money, you will have no way of knowing what you need to do. And of course, breaking the cycle is about you getting peace of mind. It gives you the ability that you're saving for the future. It gives you the ability to know that if that emergency comes up, that you do have an OMG or an emergency fund. And it gives you the ability to put your head on a pillow and not wonder how you're going to be able to afford to live next week. Lots of resources out on the internet about how you can do this. And of course, if you jump over to our website, jenrichardson.co, you will find lots of resources there that you can access. When you're ready, of course, you could always join one of my courses, My Money Makeover, where I'll give you the guidance, give you all the tools and templates that you need to look at your spending and put changes into place. One of the things that you need to do is to stop fluffing around at the top. You need to spend time looking back at your bank accounts over the last, say, 3 months to see where you spend your money and find out where you are spending that hard-earned money that you no longer need to do. Every single person that I've ever worked with when we do this are quite surprised where they spend their money. Now, for me, it was the butchers. We looked at where we were spending meat. I had 3 young teenage boys who were bottomless pits. We were eating good quality meat because, we like good quality meat. But one of the things we put in place was to reduce our spending at the butchers. It wasn't our only thing that my husband and I did, but we then made it that we had to do 3 or 4 nights a week and spend less than $10 in meat to feed the 5 of us. Other things we put in place was looking at whether we needed to spend less on groceries. I looked at some strategies of how to do that. And one of the things I always say is non-perishable items should never be bought at full price. Does take a few cycles to build up the pantry or the laundry cupboard for those things. Look at buying in bulk, look at buying things in season. And Mel has another little trick that her and her fiance are now doing. We'll get to that a little bit later. It is important to remember, though, that studies have shown that over the last 12 months, our cost of living has increased somewhere from 6.7% to 9.6%. And one of the strategies that I do inside my course, My Money Makeover, is I always say you should always look to decrease your spending on groceries by 10%. So find out what you're spending now on your grocery bill and cut it by 10%. Now that simply means with the cost of living is all you're doing is going back to where those costs were 12 months ago. So it's not all that you need to do. You need to look at putting other savings in place. So that's it from me when we're talking about the cost of living and living paycheck to paycheck and how to break that cycle. I'm just about to introduce you to the wonderful Mel, and she can tell you a little bit about her story and how she's dealt with her costs of living and her money story. She's sitting here with me in the studio and looking a little bit nervous talking on a microphone, but she'll be fine. Mel, lovely to have you join us today, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. I'm usually behind the scenes, so it's a bit confronting to be a little bit on this side.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's right, you
go. Mel usually sits on the other side and does a bit of the producing of these podcasts and does everything behind the scenes for me. So it is a little bit different to be on the other side, but enjoy. Mel, first of all, we're just going to ask you a couple of questions. And of course, you're in your 20s. You and your lovely fiance are trying to save for a wedding with all the other expenses. And the new little puppy, Pepper.
Little Pepper, yeah.
We've had Pepper in the office last week causing chaos. And how old is she now?
I think she's about 17 weeks now,
So causing chaos in here, so I can only imagine what she's doing to your house.
Oh, yeah. Turning it upside down.
All right, so Mel, I'm just hoping you might share with everybody, what was your experiences with money? And tell me a little bit about your thoughts with money, how you grew up with money, and what we call your money mindset.
So I think growing up with money, my parents weren't necessarily poor, but they weren't exactly in a position to be splashing cash around everywhere. I would say middle income, so we never really missed out. And when they grew up themselves, they grew up with 3 brothers and sisters each. So they were under the threshold. They were a bit poor. So my parents decided that when they had kids that they wanted to give their kids a better life. So we never really missed out on anything, and I was never taught how to control money and how to save and things like that. I was never given like the tools and the resources. So I have been absolutely terrible with money. I treat myself every day. I never let myself go without. And it has caused a problem because I live paycheck to paycheck, essentially.
And so when you were growing up, was money ever discussed, or was money an issue? Was it cause of fights, or it just was in the background and you didn't know anything about it really?
It was just always in the background. See, for me, like you could see my auntie, she's in a good position. So looking at her lifestyle compared to ours, like you could tell there was a difference in income, but it was just never really discussed. Like money was this thing that just you don't talk about.
So one of the things that I always talk about is money mindset is such a part of the way we deal with money and our processes with money. Of course, when you come into a relationship and you're only, I know you and Clinton have been together for some time now, but it's still a relatively new part of your life. We all have our existing money mindset, or the way we think money exists and should be spent and saved and everything. When you and Clinton started that path together, do you have different money mindsets, or does Clinton have the same sort of mindset as you? And so what I guess I'm asking is, one of you taught each other, or are you both as same situation?
Sometimes it's the blind leading the blind. He's kind of got the same mentality as what I do. He believes, he's always been taught, pay your bills first, and then whatever you have left, treat yourself, essentially. So we kind of live the same life with the same mentality of money. So he's getting a lot better than I am, actually.
I was going to say.
So we're at that point now where we're trying to discuss, like, do we join bank accounts to try and save for a house and save for a wedding and the engagement party and all that. So it's still trying to navigate that.
Yeah, look, I think you need to understand that navigation process is life. Yeah. We go through lots of different cycles with our money where we're doing different stages, whether it be, as you said, saving for a wedding, saving for a house. And then we have the struggles. We've got children, we reduced income. So the navigation is something that I find is a constant. As we get older, people's attitude to money changes, but not necessarily at the same time. So quite often when we're young, we come up with a strategy of how together we're going to deal with money. But as we go through those stages in life, people will progress at different stages to our partner, and we find that we're back to that same old, we need to discuss money again. Yeah. So I think that's really important, and it's great that you and Clinton have a open dialogue and you're discussing where you want to go. So just tell me a little bit of the money challenges that you've had in the past. And I don't mean to get personal, but we're hoping here that to show that, we all have challenges. I've said that, my 20s were awful for me with money. I spent money I didn't have. I spent money I didn't understand. And I was an accountant. Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about the money challenges that you've had in the past? And then we'll go into how you've adapting that. Because I know you're getting much, much better from the discussions we've had.
So in my early 20s also, I think it must just be a thing that your early 20s are full of mistakes and then we get better from there. But when I first started the workforce, I was working for a supermarket, and there was one week I'd be earning just $400, and I could never really save because you have things like rego and phone bills And at that time, I got my first personal loan to buy a new car. So I was paying for that. So at the end of the week, I was constantly having to borrow money off my mum because I just couldn't afford to live. My father didn't find out until maybe about a year ago, but mum had to pay for my car insurance because there was no way I could afford on $400 a week to pay for life, essentially. So then I moved down to Lake Macquarie with my partner, and I got a job cleaning, and obviously my income had increased, but I was still finding myself laying in bed at night stressing, like how am I, because now I've got rent, I've got water, I've got electricity all thrown in on that. How am I going to afford, because I've never budgeted, I've never saved, so this is all new, and now I have to navigate how to save money and
live life.
Yeah.
And so those experiences when you moved down to Lake Macquarie and you had all those additional costs that you said, you obviously had an expanded income because now you've stepped out of the supermarket realm. Did you find that as your income increased, so did your spending?
Absolutely. I think even worse than what it was before, because now I've got all this extra money to play with. I'm not having to miss out. So I found myself just constantly spending it on stuff that I didn't need, stuff that wasn't necessary. And that's probably added to my issue of why I laid awake at night, not being able to.
And so with those challenges that you faced, what have you done, either you on your own or you and Clinton, to, I guess, change the path that you were on, change the path of lying awake of a night? And of course, that's not great for any relationship, let alone your own health. And I'm not asking anything about the disagreements, because every relationship has disagreements over money, like everything else. But what things have you and or Clinton done to change that path that you're on?
So Clinton and I have recently built a veggie garden to cut our costs on groceries, because we do buy quite a lot of veggies at the supermarket, and cost of living, they're obviously going up as well. So we decided to spend that little bit of extra money to purchase the seeds from Bunnings. We were lucky enough that where my partner works, he was able to get the steel for the veggie garden. It's thriving now. We haven't quite gotten any veggies off it yet, but any day now. So we've got like cucumbers, tomatoes, pumpkin, unfortunately radishes, because my partner's obsessed with that.
I take it you're not?
No. So yeah, that's one way we can cut costs. I have decided, instead of going out to a hairdresser and spending hundreds of dollars, that I would go to Price Attack and buy the hair dye myself. So lucky Clinton every couple of weeks gets to sit there and do his little hairdressing skills while I can't see the back. Just things like that, just not essentially giving up on things, but finding cheaper alternative options to be able to save that little bit of extra money.
And so have you put budgets in place, or have you done any of the control your money strategies at all, or you're still just winging it a little bit?
Mostly winging it. I have opened a couple of new bank accounts. So I do have a different bank account. So my pay goes into one, and then I transfer it over to a different bank entirely. So I don't have access to it unless I need it. I've got some savings accounts now. We're going away over Christmas to Perth. So I've got a savings account for that, for my spending money, all my big expenses like the saving for the wedding and the house. So I'm getting better at budgeting. I'm not as bad as what I was we still have a little bit extra left over now at the end of the week. It takes time.
It does. And, look, as you know from one of the sayings that I always have is baby steps. It's every step in the right direction, still a step closer towards the end goal. So, Mel, I just want to ask you one final question before I'll relieve you of the nervousness of sitting here. Are you more confident in your future with money now that you've looked at those things, or are you still just as scared?
I would say I'm more positive. I know what needs to be done. It's just, as you said, the baby steps of actioning what needs to be done and putting the budgeting in place and breaking it all down. I don't lay awake at night anymore stressing over money. So I believe, we're going in the positive direction.
Lovely. Well, thanks so much for joining us here on Dollars and Dreams, Mel. I know it is hard for you to be on the other side of the desk and the microphone, but thanks for sharing all of that, because sometimes we do forget, particularly people of my age, that the struggles are very real when you're in your 20s. There is a lot to save for a lot of things that you need to do. But it is important, as you recognise, that you look at putting small changes so that it doesn't impact your life. And also so that you sit down and work out where you do spend your money and break that cycle. As you said, well done on having different bank accounts for your savings and things like that. It does give you that control then over your money. So that's it for today's podcast in Dollars and Dreams. Our next podcast will drop down next week, and it will be on another part of how we get control over our finances and our financial future. So don't forget to like and subscribe, share this podcast with anybody else who may benefit from Mel's experiences and also about our strategies for breaking the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. Don't ever underestimate the benefits that you can have by setting aside money so that you are not reliant on that paycheck coming in. If you need any help, please reach out to us here at jenrichardson.co. And of course, don't forget, follow us over with any of our free resources and tools and templates that we have in Got Money Honey. So that's it for me for this week. Thanks for listening and enjoy your week.
Remember, the advice shared in Dollars and Dreams is general in nature and it does not consider your own personal circumstances. Dollars and Dreams is for educational purposes only and should not be relied upon to make investment or financial decisions. If you need more help, please reach out to a financial advisor for tailored personal advice. Don't forget to click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content. And please leave me a review. Your feedback really helps me to reach other people chasing their money dreams. You can find me over on Facebook and Instagram to connect with me. You will find the link in the bio or head over to my website at jenrichardson.co where you will find free content and learning tools.